Well, here we are again. It's always such a pleasure. Recently, I was playing Terminator Salvation. It's a bitchin' little FPS game, one of my favorites of that year. It's simple and derivative, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with taking the basics and running them down to a mere sheen. Dragon Quest knows what's up. So of course I wanted to try the next game, Robocop. But with both Terminator and Robocop being a big hit, my mind wandered to another short FPS game featuring a grizzled, gun-toting protagonist, Judge Dredd. Now, as of my knowledge of this series, it's pretty threadbare. I know Dredd's had other games, and I've seen both movies for better and for worse, but I don't read comics, so all I know comes from that one crappy movie and that one really good one. With that in mind, I am obviously the perfect target for this FPS. Well, I say that, but I do actually love these kind of shooters, so let's see if this game was as 5 out of 10 as most places state. Now, before I begin, I did play the Steam version of this game, and it more or less works out of the box. If you're okay with the FOV and the game not being in widescreen, you will need to find a way to limit the frame rate, otherwise you're going to need to spam jumps just to make Dredd get off the ground, and unfortunately jumping is kind of important to this game. Very minor platforming elements. However, if you do want widescreen and to fix the FOV to something not as close, there's a tool to do that, located in the description below. You'll need to make a profile, but then it's unzipping the file in the directory and then double-clicking an exe and following instructions. With that squared away, let's begin. So what would a comic book game be without a plot? Well, thankfully this is more an adaptation of the comics than the hilariously bad Stallone movie. Dredd is out on a simple patrol when a bunch of vampires and wait a minute, zombies and vampires? Do those exist in the Dreddverse? Turns out, not long after Dredd clears the streets a little bit, he learns one of his old arch-enemies, Judge Death, and his dark judges are about to escape from their cell. Because no matter how hard you try, you can't thwart Stage 1, the dark judges escape and it's up for Dredd to control the situation, save as many civilians as he can, and pass judgment on the dark judges the only way he knows how, a few bullets at a time. There's more to talk about, but that has to do with world building and gameplay, so that probably belongs in the spoiler section. Graphically, the game looks pretty damn good for an early 2000s PS2 game, but that's probably because they go for an appealing cartoon style not too dissimilar to what Timesplitters 2 did the year before. That means the game gets away with some rather basic textures and silly character models. Realism was never the name of the game, and all of it helps to create the atmosphere of Mega City 1. The place is dark and dirty, filled with bright neon lights to distract from the decrepit conditions the average civilians have to deal with. But some places look bright and shiny to try and counter that. It gives a false sense of reassurance. What are truly beautiful are these skyboxes. In any stage set in the main megacity, you can look over any of the railings or buildings to see the city stretch on for miles. It really gives a nice sense of scale and just how tiny you really are in this massive fucking world. The character models are a bit tubular and angular, but honestly, I think it makes all the judges and main villains look more badass, and the civilians silly. It almost makes everyone else look like a cartoon character. Is that a fucking Rudy from Jet Set Radio? Audio-wise, game's aye. Dredd is voiced pretty immaculately, being the gruff, rough badass he always is, while also throwing in a few wisecracks here and there to lighten the tension.
They called me in for this.
Death is escaping into the Undercity.
Run. Judge Fear is down here somewhere too.
You're down there already? We've got to stop him.
I think I'm doing Joe.
Actually, all of the main characters are voiced superbly. All the dark judges sound suitably entertaining, evil, creepy, or nasty, and controls almost always a welcome voice. It's the citizens where things get a little funky, mostly because they repeat the same lines over and over. If I only have to hear,
I bow not to you, lawless one,
it'll be too soon. One thing I do like, however, is that they don't use traditional swear words all that often. Nope, they borrow the made-up ones from the Dredd comics. Namely, Dredd is famous of yelling
Rock
and when shit hits the proverbial fan. As for the weapons, they all sound pretty good. Nice and punchy when powerful and rapid and shrill for the fast-firing stuff. And the music is all techno. Because of course the entire world is techno in a cyberpunk world. It's good techno, I'll give it that. But aside from that, it's fairly unremarkable. For some reason, the OSC is fractured into a million different bits, with all of them being labeled Action 1, 2, and 3, or Ambience 1, 2, and 3, making looking for specific tracks a lot harder than it needs to be. Onwards to the gameplay. And it's pretty basic, but much like Terminator Resistance, basic doesn't mean bad. It's a very post-Halo style game with only 2 weapons, a high emphasis on melee, guns, and nades. Okay, maybe that last one. But still, guns and melee have a surprisingly high focus. Also, just like Terminator, this game takes the generic formula of that game and throws a few Judge Dredd inspired sprinkles. So Dredd isn't the fastest on his feet. He's a bit of a walking tank, so he has a very small shield. And once that's down, he takes hits normally. Like Halo CE, you can pick up medkits from medical judges or fallen ones, but instead of refilling your life, they are stored in this little bar over here, refilling your life when you run out. So think of it as an energy tank a la Metroid. Other than that, you shoot shit and get shit shot at you. Your main weapon for combat is the ever-present Lawgiver Mark II pistol, and just like the deal from the comics, you have access to every single fire type. Standard rounds come in about a 5-round burst, armor-piercing rounds which do more damage but are semi-auto, ricochet rounds which bounce off walls are semi-auto and apparently do less damage, but I never used them, so this part of the tutorial is all you're getting. Incendiary, which lights your opponent on fire, High X, which gives you a handheld bazooka, and finally Heat Seeker, which will actively seek out an opponent at any cost, and despite what I hear about the weapon being weaker than standard, seems to instantly kill any standard civilian like, god damn! As you go down the list, each weapon seems to get less and less ammo efficient, meaning that standard rounds give you a very respectable 64 rounds to play with, armor and ricochet holding about 32, and the rest taking up the clip at 8 shots in total. There's no need to reload between shots either, they all use the same ammo pool, so you can fire off almost all the clip of a standard rounds and slip in a bazooka shot at the very end. The judges get 2 other weapons, the Law Rod rifle, functioning as both a very devastating assault rifle and even more devastating sniper, and the Arbitrator shotgun, the definition of a I want everything in that general direction removed. Of course, that's not all you get in terms of armory. These are just the Judge exclusive weapons, and you'll see common pistols, a much worse version of the Arbitrator, grenade launchers, and machine guns as you clear the mean streets. You're also forced to use the Lawgiver throughout the entire campaign, and I'm going to warn you, I played this game wrong. During parts where undead enemies appeared, I stuck to incendiary rounds, and despite playing the vast majority of the game, I never realized that they were pretty much useless the entire way through. High X and Heat Seeker are a much better bang for your buck, and armor piercing even more since it won't empty out your entire ammo supply. Originally I was going to blame the game for a lack of ammunition, and yes, the Lawgiver will be running on fumes a little bit at times. Its only other ammo is other Lawgivers, but I can't blame the game for me playing it hilariously inefficiently. You're also given plenty of other ammo throughout the game if you aren't being a dumbass to get through it, except in the penultimate level. But even when you're out of ammo, you ain't out of options. Dredd has a very hardcore melee attack, instantly able to KO a standard human in a single hearty punch, even able to do-si-do the undead in 2. Aside from that, you also start at almost every level with 3 riot grenades, but these simply stun enemies they don't kill, which means I should probably explain about this tiny little meter. This is your Law meter. It's a key to getting good scores and thus unlockables, as well as generally keeping your head above water. As you go around the mean streets of Mega City 1, you might find people doing naughty things like scribbling on the walls, getting in your way, or even being too fat. I'm not fucking kidding. And if you think that's fatphobic or whatever, no, look at these people. And with the press of the E button, you can order them to drop to their knees, and if they comply, you can arrest them with the press of the action button. This takes them out as a non-combatant, gets them out of the way, means that they won't get caught in the crossfire, and earns you brownie points with the judges. Hell, in combat, if you shoot the weapon out of somebody's hands, or if you kill too many of their buddies, people may surrender out of pure fear. Some enemies never surrender, but it pays to pay attention. Arresting people raises your Law meter, meaning you're being a good little Boy Scout. Killing civilians, killing judges, killing anyone who surrenders, or even using the wrong ammo type on someone tanks your Law meter. Yes, using the previously bemoaned incendiary ammo on anything that is human is considered so heinous, the game instantly tanks your Law meter. Because punching people so hard that their face turns to mulch is humane, blowing their heads off is humane, and blowing them up with high explosive rounds is humane, but lighting people on fire is where we draw the line. Should also probably keep an eye on your ammo type, because heat-seeking ammo does not care whether someone legally surrendered or not. Keep fucking around and the Law meter will hit rock bottom, which is when you incur the wrath of the Special Judicial Squad.
You betray the law!
The mission won't continue and you'll be locked into an area as judges fly in from every which way and try to kill you. Yes, there's more Halo in this than I thought. It's not a major hassle, but you will need to keep that in mind. What's left then is all the little touches. The world of Dredd is a capitalist nightmare scenario, so of course massive advertisements are blared at you from every street corner. In the first level alone, you're forced to listen to commercials for grot pot, pet resurrection, and pet stuffing services, and this is before you even leave the Hall of Justice. It gets so bad that in a later level, Dredd even claims that he's getting annoyed by all the hardcore shilling. At one point in that same level, a spokesperson for a mall continues to even sell you on the mall's features even as a zombie apocalypse is breaking out, at least until she gets eaten alive. I don't know if this is intentional, but whenever Dredd approaches law-abiding citizens in the first two areas, they tend to back away as if they don't want to incur his wrath. Also, this is probably just the AI glitching out, but at one point I had a graffiti artist jump to her death rather than go back to the ISO cubes because I didn't stop her. Wow, this really must be Jet Set Radio. Hell, they even managed to fit the fact that the Lawgiver explodes in your hands if you attempt to fire it and aren't a judge. This is impossible to see in the main game as you always have Judge Dredd's motherfucking thing on him, but there are two other game modes in this game, arcade and multiplayer. Multiplayer is your traditional online multiplayer schlock. Fun in short bursts, but thankfully bots are still fully featured, meaning you can still get a multiplayer match going. Arcade mode, on the other hand, is reanimated from the Time Splitters series. For every level you complete in the main game, you unlock a new arcade level. These can range anywhere from blowing up a bunch of robots, fighting in gang warfare against an opposing gang and judges, to the most terrifying, being hunted down by a fuck ton of judges all at once. This is about the time I should mention that judges can take about 3 times the punishment an average mook can. So yes, this level has no zombies or vampires, but it's the most terrifying map of the lot. Oh, and you still can't pick up any judge weapons, so good luck, asshole. Speaking of the maps, the level of design completely slipped my mind. This may be because there's not much to talk about. The levels progress purely in a linear way, with no deviation or separation from the main path. There's no secrets to find. You can barely find extra ammo, purpose to arrest, or health on the side paths. Interestingly, there's a lot of places with completely barren, empty stretches of world that have nothing. So the level design is bland, but inoffensive. Some levels, especially towards the end, get very stingy on health and ammo, but I can't seem to think of a reason any average gamer can't beat it with a little bit of grit. The main problem is the game occasionally devolves into a where the fuck do I go game, and often the least sensible route is the one you have to take. That way you need to complete all of the objectives before continuing, and while this game didn't crash on me, I did have at least one objective glitch out and become impossible unless I killed off some civilians or restarted the entire mission. Speaking of that, I guess it's time for spoilers. There's no real huge plot shifts or anything, but hey, maybe people would like to learn the one plot twist not spoiled, and if nothing I said sold you on the game now, the plot won't salvage it. We good? We good. So the main thing that was actually pretty cool about the plot is that the vampire and zombie situation had nothing to do with Judge Death and pals. Correlation and not causation, it seems. No, the zombies are a byproduct of Dr. Icarus's pet resurrection. Hold up, are you telling me the ads were relevant to the plot? Turns out, yes. Icarus was trying to find the key to immortality and sold resurrected pets on the side. Any humans that got infected turned into the undead terrorizing the streets. Why was he doing that? Because he's part of the death cult that worships Judge Death. So after wrecking Icarus Labs, you need to hunt down the 4 judges. Despite having a level completely made up of a zombie hunt, Judge Mortis is scared off by sanitary chemicals, but as I found out the hard way is enough to kill most humans, so maybe he has a point. Judge Fire goes out like a pussy. He has the shortest level that I beat in under 5 minutes. You end up chasing Judge Dredd through Repsych and kill him, but he was a spirit anyway, so he just goes back to corporeal form. Judge View, you actually have to take on one-on-one at the end of the game's hardest level, and you can take a fuck ton of punishment. Finally, you take on Judge Death on his homeworld, and despite the fact that you're in fucking Dead World, where there's no other judges except for the ones that went out to death who are all captured, you can still incur the wrath of the Special Judiciary Squad. What are they, the fucking Inquisition? Anyway, Judge Death turns into Nemesis from Resident Evil 3, you free the captured side judges, then they take care of him after you distract him long enough, and that's that. I thoroughly enjoyed my time with Judge Dredd vs. Death. It's derivative and nothing original, but you don't need to do something cool and unique every single time to produce a quality title. Now, Granted, if I picked this up in 2003 when Halo 2 was on the way and Combat Evolved was right there, or more specifically since it was released on the PS2 and PC, picked up any of the Time Splitter series, yeah, it's nothing amazing. Especially at full price, this is a pretty damn sparse offering at the time if you're comparing it to the console counterparts. And if it's the PC you're talking about, don't even bother. Call of Duty, 13, Jedi Academy, and Postal 2 all came out that year alone, and those are just some of the more popular choices. But right now, 2024, especially after the bangers of the Robocop and Terminator games from Teyon, it's pretty damn alright. Especially since the price has dropped to less than my average lunch, it's a pretty good deal all around. For the crimes of being a pretty decent first-person shooter, and for being a nice adaptation of the comic books, and for the crime of letting us step into Judge Dredd's shoes, life in my Steam library, to be pulled out and played when I want a quick shot of Mega City 1. Take 'em away, boys!